This video is about prompt engineering. Is it a job? Is it a skill set? What does it really mean for you, and how important is it going forward? Can you actually have a full-time job? I'm going to answer that question and give a concrete example of why in this video, but also I want to lay some context here because this does seem to be a common thing that I'm seeing, in a lot of places, a lot of pushback on, well, prompt engineering isn't a real thing, or it's just sort of like this minor thing that everybody should do, and it's really not that hard. Like example, it's easy as shit, and anybody who tells you otherwise. And he gives an example of something you shouldn't do and something you should do, which is prompt engineering. And also, like, this is not something that the first time you go in you would type. But this is definitely something that everybody, I think, should strive to do at least a little bit of understanding how to talk to the chatbots. So this is, Rachel is correct in that it is a skill set. But I think she's incorrect in that isn't a job, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Let's go to a few more people. AI prompt engineering isn't the future. It's a pretty long article. I had GPT-4 summarize it, and he points out that the increasing proficiency of AI models will actually make it so that prompt engineering is not needed anymore. I disagree. This is like saying I'm talking to somebody who doesn't really know a whole lot, has very limited language, and then I go and I have to explain things in detail to them, and then you go to talk to somebody who's really smart. You don't have to explain things. You still have to explain like your situation and the context, and there's still going to be things that you can say that affect how things come back at you. And so it still is going to be an important skill set in my opinion. No, you're not a prompt engineer. I can understand why there's a lot of pushback on this. This is on Y Combinator's, I guess this is their message board or news, is prompt engineering snake oil? I think to some extent it is a snake oil, because you have a lot of people. I saw an ad the other day where it was just like normal ad and then with AI. Like it basically had almost nothing to do with AI, or at least it just seemed like they were just adding AI on top of the words that they were putting in the ad. And this is something that I pointed out a comedian on an older video who was like, people were adding AI to everything. He made a funny analogy of like AI pizza. And so there's definitely a lot of that going on. However, there are jobs out there. Anthropic put up a job for, I think it was like $300,000 for prompt engineering. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is something that is sustainable in the future, but I'm going to give you an example right now of how it actually will be sustainable in the future. And there will be people who are prompt engineers full-time. That is all they do. And it has to do with software development. So to a lesser extent, like the people who are going in and just like, help me write an email, you don't, for this situation, here's what the email I got, then help me respond to it. To a certain extent, that is less important from a prompt engineering standpoint. That's not necessarily that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if you've seen, this is just an example. So if you've seen the Tree of Thoughts paper, it's pretty short. I highly recommend you at least checking it out. But basically in ChatGPT, right now, the way it works is it's input-output. Basically, you put in an input and it goes on one path. It picks a path and it's generating the next token, and then it's using that token to generate the next token. So it can kind of go in all sorts of different directions. You put in a different input and it can go over here. In Bard right now, their model is much, much lighter, but they have some of this. I think they have kind of like a chain of thought where they're generating, I think they're generating ideas, or they're kind of calling the model in a multi-step process, which dramatically improves the output. That's kind of the point of the paper. And they talk about this Tree of Thoughts situation where you ask the model, so you get an input, and then you ask the model, give me 3 ideas on how to respond to this input. And then you ask the model, you do another call, evaluate these 3. And you can envision that this opens up a huge can of worms. So specifically for a product that I'm developing, Hyper Service Agent, which is like a customer service AI chatbot product, we need to input this. We need to use this Tree of Thoughts, but it's even more complex than that, because there are multiple decisions that the software needs to make. And so it's not just for one decision, it's for really like, there's kind of like 3 main decisions that each input needs to pick in terms of where it goes and what it does. And those are kind of tied together. And so there's a bunch of prompts that are going into even one input from the user. And the wording of each of these prompts, you know, what is the wording of how you ask for the ideas? Do you call it ideas? In this case, they call it thoughts. What is the wording of how you evaluate them? A lot of testing needs to be done on this. And I could see, if I was like a bigger company, hiring a full-time prompt engineer to spend all day, every day, coming up with ideas and testing and evaluating the validity of each prompt. And so I think this is something that will be true going forward for many years. And this is a specific case within software development because the scale of the prompts is so much greater than a guy just going in and asking for ideas or gift ideas for his wife. That's not nearly as complicated, doesn't require nearly as much sophistication. It's also not like dozens of prompts from one input. So if you envision this situation, you're going around, you're asking to evaluate, you may be looping, but there could be dozens or even hundreds of model calls from one single input. And there can be in my case, there's probably about 5 different prompts that we have to use. And so each one is affected by the other. And so you could envision how many different test cases do we have to test? And there's a lot. And so in this case, I see this going forward as software development companies that need to use AI in their software will need prompt engineers unless their use case is extremely simple, or like the input-output model works really reliably. Which in more complex scenarios, it does not. You definitely don't want to just go input-output. You actually want some sort of evaluation system in place. And so, well, what does that look like? And that is where prompt engineering comes into play. So back to kind of my main thing. Yes, it is a skill set. Yes, it's a broad skill set that everybody should strive to at least learn the basics of. But it is a job. It can and will be. It is a job right now. There are jobs out there. And going forward, there will be jobs for prompt engineering, for prompt engineers, I think within software development companies. And potentially other companies that maybe use AI heavily, and they're trying to figure out how to most effectively use it for their specific use cases. That's maybe less of a use case, or at least something that I don't really see the path for that exactly. But the idea that it's just not a job is kind of in vogue, I guess, right now, to kind of push back and seem like, hey, you know, it's not really a job, but it is. I promise you that it is a job, and that if you are really good at prompt engineering, that there will be jobs for you in the future. I don't know how many, obviously, but I think software companies are, if they haven't already realized this, that if they're working with AIs and calling OpenAI's API, that prompt engineering is real. Not only that, but if you can envision that you're calling OpenAI's API a million times a month because you got a thriving business and you're using their API, prompt engineering can save you money because they can compress the prompts, potentially find more efficient prompts that cost you less money when you're doing the API calls. So let me know what you think in terms of, am I wrong? Is the prompt engineering really just not a job? And anything on that front. If you like this video, if this is helpful, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.